Hi again, so I'm Amanda and I'm back to tell you a little bit about my condition and why I needed assistance in conceiving my two sons. So, long story short, I had an early menopause, but it's a little bit of a difference to normal menopause. So, it is actually officially called premature ovarian failure, or it was changed quite recently in recent years to premature ovarian insufficiency, just because the word failure, some people voted that it was just very negative. Really, it's like you failed and it's not really fair. So anyway, I was 10 when I started my periods and I had 6 of them. And at school, you're told that your periods will be irregular and not to think anything of it. So when they stopped at 6 months, I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't tell anybody. I just thought it was normal. Did not think of anything at all. I did have some sort of thoughts in my head, like, which is really weird. I still think this is really weird for like a 10, 11-year-old to think, oh, you can't have children. Really weird to kind of go there when you don't really understand it. But I did always have this little thought in my head. But anyway, the year that they stopped, they completely went away. I ballooned up in weight. So I think I was about a size 8 to 10. And then I was literally 3 months later a size 18. And at this point I was 11. So I just completely rocketed. There was no... I'd just started secondary school, so my diet changed a little bit, but not that much to make a big impact on my weight. My mood started to go down, but I just put that down to being bigger, started to be interested in boys, being, a preteen, and again, didn't really say anything. And then I wrote kind of a weird letter, a really negative letter to myself, and my mum found it, and then she spoke to me about it, and I said I didn't like how overweight I was. I think I was crying at the time, and she took me to the doctor, and the doctor told me some people just put on weight, and I don't put on weight. My wife puts on weight, so all you need to do is eat boiled vegetables and chicken, and that's what he said. Then my mum turned around and said, could it be her age? And he said, possibly. Have you started your periods? And then I said what happened, and he was like, oh, okay, we need to do some blood tests. And I always think that if my mum wouldn't have said that one thing, we were literally walking out the door, he dismissed me, then I would not have got diagnosed. I really would not get diagnosed. And my condition is missed in people so many times. They're either told it's something else, or they're just kind of told it's what it is. So I had to then go for a series of tests. So I had some ultrasounds, which were... They were on the maternity department. By this time I was 13, I should have said, so I was 13 years old now, so it'd been 2 years since my periods had stopped. And I was made to sit as an overweight teenager on a maternity pregnancy ward, so people there waiting to get scanned to see their babies, and the amount of dirty looks I got looking down on me, and I mean, I had a baby face, so it was really clear that I was not an adult. I was just bigger, and people were just probably assuming that I was a pregnant teenager. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that was it was a horrible place to be and to sit and feel judged. And having the ultrasound itself was a lot. So I was 13, I was overweight, I'd never had a boyfriend, I'd never been kissed, and I was then being examined. So my ultrasound was internal. And I remember just thinking it looked like this big, like, alien stick that they had to put in me. And I remember just probably knowing a bit too much. I was like, that's the thought that in my head was, that's where my baby should be, but I won't ever have a baby in there. And yeah, that's very heavy for a 13-year-old. And yeah, it was interesting though. I liked seeing the scan. So they done the scan and they really couldn't see much of my ovaries. So I think they just literally, because there wasn't any hormones there, they just literally started to shrink. So apparently your ovaries should be about 4 centimeters long and 1 centimeter thick, and mine were 1 centimeter and 0.5 centimeter in length. So they were really, really tiny. So I then had to get examined internally by a male gynecologist, and he had to look at me internally, he had to feel my breasts and all this, and I really remember that well, and I remember how I felt, and that was a lot. And then they basically just sat us down and said, I can't remember what the term they used. I don't know if they used early menopause, but they just said, when you want a family, you won't be able to have one. And he stood up and left the room. And that was that. I look back at it and I laugh because it's just crazy. I was 13 and he just left. And then he come back in, because obviously I'd cried, and he came back in and said, in about 15 to 17 years time, when you want kids, come back and we will look into treatment. And then he didn't say what it was or what that treatment would be. It then took me, I mean, internet was only just really, you know, past the like dial-up stage by then. It was still there, and I literally Googled everything, and may not have been Google, but I don't know, I searched everything and I found out everything myself. There wasn't really any help back then to find out more about the condition. They said they were going to send me some things, and I remember being really excited about getting this little package of information so I could understand it. And it arrived, and it was all grey-haired ladies on it. And I remember opening it. I remember the picture and everything. And I'm 30, almost 34. So this is almost 21 years ago now. And that just, my heart sank. I just really thought I was going to get some answers and understand it a little bit more. So yeah, that sucked. So I found the Daisy Network back then, but they were in their really early stages. So the Daisy Network is a charity for people with my condition. So they have fact sheets. And as I said, it was teeny tiny back then. It's huge now. And they work with doctors that specialise in POI, Premature Ovarian Insufficiency. So there's so much more information because it is so different to the early menopause. It isn't just not being able to have children naturally. There's so many different things that go with it. And so if anyone is watching this and you do have POI, maybe get in touch with them, because unfortunately GPs do not know a lot. So from my own research, I realised I needed more tests. I needed to find out about my bone density and HRT and things like that. They put me on the contraceptive pill when I was 13. They used the reason that it was more like other girls my age, and it would give me monthly bleeds again, so I felt more normal. And I thought that was the only reason for them. They didn't explain that having a monthly bleed actually keeps your uterus really healthy. It kind of sheds the lining, it just keeps it at a bigger size. Did not explain that to me. Unfortunately, through this kind of diagnosis, I did end up with some mental health issues. I ended up with a bit of an eating disorder because I'd gained so much weight, and I was dancing and I wanted to be smaller. And then I decided to stop taking HRT, and I stopped taking it and I lost loads of weight. I don't think it was related. I think it literally was because of my eating, but I had in my head that was the reason why. I then found out that my bone density had actually gone below the recommended amount because I did have such a gap in my HRT, and probably the eating as well. So when I was 20, I had a camera through my tummy to have a look at my ovaries to see if there was anything there, and I think they'd done this more for their own research, but they said there were a couple of follicles there which contain the eggs, and then when I asked about it at a later date, they said that there wasn't. So it was really, really confusing, but not much came from that investigation. So that's kind of a summary of how I got diagnosed, and I continued on the contraceptive pill to probably about age 18 to 20, I can't remember exactly, and I then went on to HRT. So basically the contraceptive pill was too high in hormones for me, so it gave me like headaches, it made me really hazy. When it gave me a monthly bleed, it just really knocked me about and I didn't feel good at all. So I went on to HRT, which is a lower dose of hormones, and that suited me a lot better, and the migraines went, but these were like crippling migraines. They literally, I couldn't do anything. And I know people get those with periods anyway, but it was really, really painful. And I had really painful boobs as well for most of the month, to the point that I actually went and got a breast examination because I was having lumps in my boobs, but they were just hormones and they were painful, so apparently they can't be cancerous if they're painful. That's what I got told, but they did do all the tests anyway, because with my condition there is an increased risk of breast cancer, so you are really prompted to do those examinations quite regularly, so that's something you need to do. So there still wasn't really much help in finding out what would happen when I wanted children. And as I said, I found some forums. I think back then it was like Fertility Friends, and you'd ask questions and find out things through there. But again, there wasn't many people with my condition. But I found out that I could have children through egg donation. But with that, I was aware of the cost when I was a teenager. So it made me not be a teenager and not live my 20s, because I always thought I need to have money to be able to have children. And yeah, I really focused on, will I have children? Will I not have children? What would I do? And that was literally the running commentary in my head. And I'm not making this up, every day until my son was born, I wondered if I would have children. Every single day, it would hit me like a ton of bricks. Every 3 or 4 months, I'd literally just have a meltdown from a teenager through to when I had my first child. And yeah, it's a lot. And what I told myself back then is that when and if I went through any sort of treatment, that I would share my journey, however painful it was, because I was desperate for somebody to be like me, because I felt so different. And I was very open about it back then, even at school, and I joke about it because that was my way of coping with it. But I really wish there was someone there. And since I've met people online that are my age now and were the same age back then, and it's so sad in a way that there wasn't that support for us as such young teenagers. I mean, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s are considered early menopause, like POI. And I think there's a girl as young as 9 it happened to, and there's no explanation for it unless you've had cancer treatment. So if you've had cancer treatment, a lot of the time I think it's the radiotherapy causes you to go through the menopause. So I really feel for those people that have survived cancer and then have POI afterwards. I just think that's such a bad hand to be dealt. But I am here to reassure people that you can have a family, and it will not feel any different using donor eggs whatsoever. So my whole journey, I did document and done video diaries of my first IVF, especially because that was so in depth, because it was all from the beginning through to him being born. But the son that I had 5 weeks ago was still one of the embryos left from that time, so there wasn't so much to catch up on. But I'm going to be doing more videos for you guys to explain a bit more about the process and what happened, and little bits of advice along the way of how you can change your mindset to be a lot more positive, especially if you've had such a battle. So there's a lot of people with my condition again that have just been told it's some people get diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, which is almost the complete opposite. And they get the wrong treatment and then they'll go through IVF and it doesn't work because their egg quality is quite poor a lot of the time. So if you do have eggs left, not necessarily everybody, a lot of the time the egg quality is quite low, so it won't work. So that is a little bit about my POI and how I got diagnosed, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys the whole process of the IVF and how it worked out for us. And then I'm going to be doing another video on how I feel about being a donor conceived mum. I'm going to be brutally honest in it as well. Brutally honest. I'm very, very honest. I don't sugarcoat anything. I'm very open with my feelings. It doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It doesn't mean it's going to be good. It's literally going to be honest, because as I said, I wish there was somebody there for me to guide me, to make me feel that I wasn't so alone in this journey and this condition. Yeah, so I really am looking forward to sharing that with you guys, and I'll see you next time.